All right, so here we are officially on our Wednesday morning training for new agents. Last week we got all the way through sending an inspection response. Now, remember, there's a lot going on in the background here that Andrea is helping you with. I mean, we didn't talk about sending homeowners association documents to your client that we had to get from the listing agent, and that we also double checked with the HOA directly. We didn't talk about all that stuff. There's a lot going on. This is the basics, and if you utilize Andrea, she's going to be really helpful. But we just finished inspection responses. So the assumption in this conversation today is that we've made it through inspections and we've agreed on a concession, which then we've sent a separate amendment potentially for that says, in lieu of repair, maybe the buyer's inspection responses said in lieu of repairs, seller to credit buyer $4,000 of closing costs. Wonderful. So we have to send an amendment because we don't want the lender to see those things. So we have to send an amendment that the lender can see that just merely says seller to credit $4,000 towards any of buyer's lender allowed purchasing expenses. That's how I phrase it. Then they could literally spend it on cats if the lender will let them. Because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're like, you said closing costs, and then the term closing costs is really only used for $400, and then you got this big fight between ignorant people, and that's never fun. So you're gonna kind of phrase it, I always phrase it, it's written in there this way, that seller to credit buyer $4,000 towards any of buyer's lender allowed purchasing expenses. That's how I write it. That literally opens the door up to anything the lender will allow. You'll see all kinds of things people write, but that is by far the best one I can write because it leaves it open enough that it's impossible to define down. If the lender says it's okay, which is great. Anyway, that's an aside. Again, more free information. So we're done with inspection responses. That is a huge hurdle. I want y'all to pay attention to this part. I have this conversation with all of my clients. Hey, when we get, maybe it's we're starting the transaction and I've sent that crazy text, oh, hello, woo, congratulations. They're used to seeing you. This is an aside too, sorry. They're used to seeing you every day. You're showing houses like crazy people, right? You're used to seeing you every day, every other day, certainly every weekend. You're looking at 2-3 houses. You got this relationship going. You're emotionally connected because you want to sell a house and they want to buy a house and all this cool stuff. And then all of a sudden, the water gets calm. And in most scenarios, calm water is like really soothing and relaxing. But imagine the moment, the Bible has that moment where Jesus is on the water in the boat with all the fishermen and it's just, he tells the storm to quit and it just goes calm. Like that's soothing at some level, but it's also terrifying when it's going from crazy and emotional and wild and scary, and then all of a sudden it stops. It's just like that pause right there. It's a little disconcerting because you don't fully understand what just happened. When you're in the middle of a storm and all of a sudden it shuts down completely, that eerie silence is deafening, right? Our transactions are like that. Our transactions are way up here. I'm trying to keep my fingers in the screen. Way up here in emotion and stress and excitement and all this. And then as soon as you get an accepted offer, it goes all the way to the bottom. And it's silent. There's nothing to do. They've been used to running around like crazy, being scared and excited and confused all at the same time, and all the emotion and all the energy just sucked out of the room, and they're not ready for it. So you have to have the conversation. Listen, we've been up here. This has been crazy. It's like planning for a wedding, and then the wedding day happens, and then people go into depression afterwards, or postpartum depression afterwards. It's like all of that for this, right? And you're down here at the bottom now. So when you gotta warn them, listen. When I'm not calling you every day, that's a good sign. That means things are going the way they're supposed to. We're working on the background stuff, paperwork, and which is down here. And then we're gonna come back up during the inspections for people work. This is the fun stuff. This is where me and you are talking a lot, we're communicating, it's a little stressful, there's emotions involved. And then after the inspections, it's gonna do this again, We're gonna go back to paperwork. And there's title companies and lenders, and you're working with your lender a little bit, and I'm working with the title company and your lender, and we're talking to the agents, and we're doing all this stuff, but it's down here from a relationship perspective because I'm just doing something else for a second. And then we're gonna appraisal, we're gonna come back up to people work again. We're gonna have conversations, we're gonna celebrate, or we're gonna mourn, or whatever happens. And we're gonna come back down, and we're gonna be working on paperwork again. And we're gonna come back up for closing. Right as we prep for closing, it's gonna be a whirlwind again. You're gonna find out right before closing what your numbers are, and we're gonna schedule closing dates, and don't forget, and lots of emails, and don't take your refrigerator because they bought it. I mean, all this crazy communication and stuff, and then it's gonna come back down after closing, and you're gonna move into your house. And so you need to, client, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you need to be ready for that. That we've been up here for a long time, and we're gonna relationally and experientially, and we're gonna come down here to paperwork, and we're gonna come back up to people work at inspections, back down to paperwork, and then back up for appraisal, and back down for more paperwork, and then back up for closing, and then you're gonna settle into your house. So you're gonna literally feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster, and it's okay. If I'm calling you, that means I'm either giving you an update, or we're trying to solve a problem or fix something or ask a question. So if I'm not calling, that means everything's good, there's no major updates, and you should just keep rowing the boat and just enjoy the silence for a second. So that's just a good reminder in the midst of where we're at in this transaction, that this fake transaction we're talking about is we just finished inspections, which was again up here, and you're gonna tell them, we're gonna drop down now, and it's gonna be less communication for a bit while we wait on the appraisal. That's the normal order. So now, they're working with their lender behind the scenes, we're working with title company behind the scenes, and we're waiting on the appraisal. That's what's next, is the appraisal. So now, there's definitely gonna be documents flying back and forth. If they're an FHA or VA loan, now's when the FHA or VA loan amendatory clauses start to come out, and you have to get some signatures here and there. You have to be able to explain some things, but it's generally way down. So now we're waiting on the appraiser. The appraiser is going to schedule their showing just like the inspector did in the vast majority of cases. They're just going to go on Broker Bay and poke the buttons, and they're gonna wind up showing themselves the house. Just like we did, just like the inspector did, the appraiser does the same thing. The lender orders the appraisal. We talked about that when we talked about what we do when the documents are all signed at the beginning of an accepted offer. It goes to the lender, they start ordering appraisals. The lender orders the appraisal, nobody knows who they are. The list agent might know who they are because they're gonna schedule the showing. They'll at least know somebody related to the appraiser, but not everybody. So you've got a couple options as you start to see this appraiser come through. Normally it's on the list agent to do this, but you need to be aware of it. That if there's a need, I don't recommend talking to the appraiser often or in detail, because you do have to be careful. You can't go up to your appraiser, send him an email that says, hey, Mr. Appraiser, we really need this to appraise at $350,000. Can't do that. That's breaking some laws now, and they'll actually remove themselves from the transaction, and you'll have to order another appraisal. So don't talk to them about details like that. But if you and the list agent both know that there's a scenario where some communication is worthwhile to the appraiser, you don't want to tell the appraiser he doesn't know what he's doing, but you do want to communicate some intricacies about the house, the location, the timing, why we listed it the way we did, how many offers there were, right? I know they're going through a lot, but you can go back and listen to all this, but how many showings we had, why we picked the offer as fast as we did. Maybe I know something about some of the other homes in the neighborhood that sold. Well, that one, so you're going to have this conversation with them, and I'm going to be saying things like, my email looks a lot like this, which is normally an email. Hey, Mr. Appraiser, thank you so much for participating in this transaction with us. I wanted to let you know that we had 47 showings and 5 offers in the first 12 minutes of the listing. And so my clients wore out quickly, and we just decided that this offer that's exceptionally over list value with a huge appraisal gap and a lot of other ones that are willing to do virtually the same thing, and who knows what else could have come, was the offer that made the most sense to our client at this time, and they just wanted to be done. Let's see, about the value. I'm going to say we listed the house at, the offer we received of $350,000. We listed the home at $300,000, not because we thought that's what it should be worth, but we wanted to make sure the appropriate buyers were exposed to the listing in their searches. We realized that in this market, what we found is, and you can just go through some of the strategy, we found that many of the buyers that can afford the $350,000 house, which is what we obviously clearly believe this house to be worth, and they do too, are not searching for $350,000 homes anymore because they know they have to go so high. So they're searching for $300,000 or $325,000. So we wanted to price it where we get the right buyers seeing it, knowing that the market would push it up to the appropriate value. So, you can just you got to be careful, and how I phrased that probably wasn't perfect. You can't tell them what you need it to come in at, but you can communicate that what supports the purchase price or what supports the list. But I'm telling them some strategic things that I employ, and I really do employ these, because I don't want them to think we thought it was worth $300,000. We think it's worth what the purchase price is. But the reason we listed here is for this reason. Anyway, so I'm just communicating to them a little bit, very nicely, appreciating their help and effort in the process. If they have any questions, they can ask. Oh, by the way, the house on the corner was bought by an investment group, an out-of-state investor with a distressed seller situation. They just kind of picked it up off market, or whatever you want to say about it. And it needs a complete renovation. I know there's no pictures that show you that because it was an off-market thing, but that is the reality there. So it's, you're just kind of communicating some things. These are what's important, all that stuff. So you may need to have a conversation with the list agent that just says, hey, when the appraiser sends the request to show, will you please let me know who it is? Because I'll put together a packet, or at least I'll put together an email that I think we should potentially send them to try to help them understand how to get where we need to go on value. You need to ask your clients at some level, or be cognizant that this does impact their bottom line on the house. So on an appraisal, your list price was $300,000, we offered $350,000. Some buyers are going to want it to come in at $350,000 because they don't want their appraisal gap to have to be used. Cash is king. Or maybe they really want the house and they don't have a gap, and that was okay and they got it accepted, but because it was on the market for 20 days, no gap, but it's $350,000, but we want it to come in at $350,000 because we really want the house. We don't want to use our cash, or we really want the house. So that's when we're pushing it, trying to get it to that $350,000, trying to help the appraiser arrive at that pricing location. However, there are going to be clients that are trying to get a deal, and we're just giving this big number to get our foot in the door. And our client is expecting fully, and maybe you are too, based on what you've seen in the neighborhood, you're expecting it to really come in at $325,000 or something. So then maybe you're not communicating to try to get to the big numbers. You're actually going to let the appraiser arrive at his own conclusions, knowing full well there's a cup holder right here. Knowing full well that he's likely going to arrive at a lower price than the agreed upon purchase price, and your buyer is willing to take the risk that they don't get the house or whatever. So the key is you don't want to accidentally go the wrong direction and help an appraiser arrive at the right price when your client was hoping it would come down, because they're not worried about the cash. They just want a better entrance number to the house, or vice versa, right? We didn't do anything and the guy came in low, and now we lost the house that we wanted, and you could have tried to impact it. A lot of it's hindsight being 20/20, and you'll never really know the other outcome, but it's just something to think about, because you know me, I'm always overthinking and overanalyzing and trying to come up with some strategy for everything. And I want you to do it too, most of the time. Be creative. So that's how I communicate with an appraiser. That's the sort of thing that I'll say. List agent, for sure I will, if it makes sense for my client. If it doesn't make sense for our client, I won't talk to the appraiser at all sometimes. I don't generally provide comps, because there are definitely times where if you're not going to put in the real work to understand how appraisals work and the real work to do the adjustments on the comps. So this one has a fireplace, this one doesn't. So plus 1,500 or plus 3,000 to this one or minus 3,000 to this one. If you're not going to put in that level of work, you might send a comp that actually hurts you. So you just have to be really careful. I don't send comps very often because the appraiser can see the comps. I might shoot an address. Hey, I don't know, this one probably will pop up for you, but you can take a look at this one if it's a really easy comparable one. But I stay away from comps. I more just communicate the transaction and why we picked what we did and how many offers there might be, those sorts of things. Or why they should not use a house particularly. If I know one is a terrible comp, you might be interested in using this one, but here's why you shouldn't blank. Because it just doesn't fit, because it was a son transferred it to his daughter, or a dad transferred it to his daughter for $3. Like, obviously you can't use that as a comparable sale. So there's some stuff like that you can tell them. But what's going to happen now is the appraiser is going to, generally, you're going to tell your client, buyer or seller, the buyer, we may not know when they're going out. We might, you're going to ask the list agent, hey, let me know when the appraiser sets his appointment. But you may not know. But the goal is, that everybody knows it's been ordered. At least your client does, because they paid for it. It's been ordered. And if we do hear that the appraiser is scheduled to go out on Tuesday, I normally tell my client, plan on about 7 days after they go to the house for them to get the report done and sent to the lender. About 7 days. If it's been ordered and it's been picked up, meaning some appraiser picked up the file, then I would say it's 7 to 10 days from that point, or maybe just say 10 days. But that's just from a timeline perspective. It could be more, it could be less. I've had them come in 3 days, I've had them come in 15, 20 days. But generally speaking, it's 7 days from the time they arrive, 5 to 8, 5 to 10, but 7's a good number to put on your brain. At least we won't be wrong by a ton. So the appraiser goes out, he then gathers comps. He then does all his research. He then does all his computer work for adjusting for all the different things in the houses that are just off, different square footages that, one's 1,200, one's 1,400. He might adjust for that square footage. One's on 3 acres, one's on 1 acre. He might adjust for that. One's got a fireplace, one doesn't. Fences, barns, quality levels, those seldom come into play, but they do. Basements, no basements, all that stuff. He's looking for perfect storms, right? He'd love to compare ranch houses to ranch houses. He'd love to compare ranch with basement to ranch with basement. He'd love to compare 2-story to 2-story. But you don't always get that option, so then he has to make those adjustments. So in some houses, it's real easy because it's just like cookie cutter homes. They all sold for 160 to 165, and he just picks a number in there. So sometimes it's super easy, sometimes it's really tough. That's how the appraiser goes. So then when he turns the report in, you've kind of got 2 phases. You do need to be aware of this. Phase 1 is they sent the report. Go ahead.
Is it certified appraiser? He go to see the home and he keep his agent who just go there and do the measurement and give to him all the details, and then he will calculate the price.
Yeah, so the question was, does the appraiser themselves always go, or sometimes do they send a teammate to go? And the answer is, they sometimes send a teammate. You might have like me. You guys are licensed agents and you're able to do stuff, but my name's still on it. That's the way appraisers can work sometimes too. They've got a guy running a team and his team may go out, but the team leader's name's going to be on it.
But the guy who go, he's not certified.
He might or he might not. I don't know what the rules are for them. But I would imagine they have to, if they're doing appraisal stuff, they probably have to. But maybe not, because it's kind of just pictures and measurements. So maybe they're not certified. We do have a problem here in town. There was somebody that hired like 4 new teammate appraisers. And so they started picking up a lot more transactions. And we had 4 bad appraisals in a row from that people. Boom, 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 boom. Way low. And we fought them all and we won them all. And we got new appraisals and they came out fine the second time. So we have blacklisted that appraiser. We're not letting him do our deals. I mean, just not going to happen because it doesn't make. He almost blew up 4 deals in a row for our team in a matter of 30 days.
In the same neighborhood? Or?
Nope, all over. So that you don't often get a say in it, but I know like Fairway has blacklisted them, so they won't allow them to do any of their appraisers anymore, which is again another great reason to use the same lenders that we use for our clients. Like, listen, we are, if you use the appropriate lender, we are on top of things. Like the bad appraisers are being kicked out as fast as we can kick them out because they're messing up transactions. And so not to say we won't get a bad appraisal or one we disagree with, but it is that we have actually at least done as much as we could to avoid it. And if you go with Rocket Mortgage, there's no help being done on making sure it's a good one.
Yeah, because sometimes I go to the appraiser and I ask them the question. He say he don't know. He just come to take the picture and take the mirror.
Yep. That's sometimes they don't know.
They don't know.
I don't know the rules on that. Something I can follow up on. But so the appraiser is going to go through these 2 phases. He's going to turn the report in with his evaluation, or I guess valuation of price, to his. Some companies go through a third party. So, I pay Fairway. Fairway then orders an appraisal through a appraisal management company, an AMC, appraisal management company. So there's a third party that then organizes all the appraisers itself. So it's Fairway pushes it down to an appraisal management company. The management company pushes it to the appraisers. So then Fairway is actually removed from the appraiser directly. So if we have a problem, I tell Fairway, Fairway tells the management company fights with the appraiser themselves. Can be good, can be bad. But that's the way it works in most cases. Some companies have direct list of appraisers, but a lot of times you're going to see these management companies. Anyway, so the appraiser turns it into the management company. The management company generally actually looks at it themselves to make sure it's not silly. Then they send it to Fairway, and Fairway is going to then look at it through their underwriting department. So you're not going to know when it goes to the management company. You will, however, know when it goes to Fairway. And this is where the 2-step process goes. You can kind of talk to your client, but be careful and maybe just don't talk to them. But let's say it comes to the management company. Management company says, yep, looks okay. They weren't like totally high when they were doing this. Okay, great. Send it to Fairway. Fairway is going to see it, and Austin or somebody may go, hey, Eli, appraisal came back, good to go, no repairs. But it still needs to go through our underwriting department. So we're going to potentially get a notification that, hey, everything looks good. Well, my question, if they don't say it, will always be, has it been through underwriting? Because underwriting is going to look at it and to make sure that they agree the guy was not high while he was doing his appraisal. Because again, they're protecting the interest of the investor that's buying the loan. So if the guy puts this silly valuation on it that's so high and there's no comps to support it, they're going to kick it out and they're going to do another one or ask him to adjust it. So underwriting could ask for repairs. Underwriting could ask for a price adjustment. Underwriting could ask for a change in some language you used writing somewhere. I mean, there's a million things underwriting could do. It's very seldom that I have an issue in underwriting. Very seldom. 1 in 100. 1 in 50 if it's happening a lot.
They can ask for repairs for the seller to.
They can say. So she asked if they can ask for repairs for the seller to fix, and the answer is yes. They're gonna say, not really dictating who does it in most cases. Sometimes they may say a licensed contractor, but they're gonna say, we are not going to loan on this house unless the kitchen has hot water running to it, because maybe somehow they turned it on and there was no hot water in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They're going to say, we will not loan on this house until the hot water in the kitchen is working. So then everybody gets to decide who's going to fix the hot water to the kitchen. The seller, maybe the buyer, maybe you're going to escrow 150% of the repair cost and then fix it after closing. Those are some possibilities that we can talk about at a later date. But underwriting, it's not done until underwriting says it's done. And underwriting could always come back later and say it's not done again. But generally speaking, it goes to Fairway and they say, hey, your value is good, or hey, it's 5,000 low, but it's not been through underwriting yet. Great, don't tell your client yet. Give them 2 days and then tell your client. It's going through underwriting, everything looks okay, but it's going through underwriting to make sure that there's nothing silly going on.
So wait till underwriting actually.
Wait till underwriting actually sees it and approves
Repair
it.
will go with the same price?
What's that?
No extra price?
Sometimes there will be, so his question was, will it always go with the purchase price? And the answer is no. Sometimes it'll be higher, lower, and right on it. And if it's low, that's when you go back to negotiation mode or you pay your appraisal gap or whatever, right? That kicks into gear. If we're at 350 and the value comes in at 325, that's the new loan basis. And so if we had a $5,000 appraisal gap, we're gonna then pay 230 or 330 for the house. We're gonna add that 5 on top. The seller may say, no, that's not enough, and then we have to either do more or walk away. But the appraisal could come in high. Well, that doesn't raise the purchase price. If it comes in high, then you just go, awesome, cool, celebrate and buy the house for 350. Because it came in at 375 and you were at 350, great, we'll just buy it for 350 then. And you never tell the seller what the price was unless it's low. If it's right on the money or it's high, your communication to the seller's agent, to the listing agent, will be the appraisal came back and we were good on value. I didn't tell them what price it was. I just said we're good on value and we're good. Or it came in a little low, but our appraisal gap is fine. You could do that too if it comes in low. So if you're going to amend the purchase price because it came in that low and maybe the appraisal gap doesn't cover it or whatever, then you have to send the appraisal to the list agent. You're gonna say, hey, appraisal came in at 325. We had a $5,000 appraisal gap. We were purchasing at 350. Came in at 325 plus 5 is 330. So here's the appraisal. So you're not just trusting me like it's proof, like here's the number. And here's an amendment changing the value to the purchase price of 330, which includes our $5,000 appraisal gap. And then you just cross your fingers and hope they sign.
Yeah.
Because
I was
remember,
gonna say they have to agree to that.
Yep, because remember, an appraisal gap in almost every circumstance is a one-way promise. It is me saying I will pay you $5,000 extra over the appraisal, not the seller agreeing to $5,000 over the appraisal. It is the buyer promising I will pay you up to $5,000 over appraisal. So that's how that works. If it comes in low, that's what we do. We communicate to the people, send them the appraisal, and we try to adjust the price with an amendment. If it's at or above, we just tell the list agent, hey, great news, appraisal came back and we're good on value. It's a great way to say it. However you want to say it, doesn't matter to me.
If appraisal comes less, if buyer change his mind because appraisal comes less, then us money go back, right?
Great question. His question was, if the appraisal comes in low,
Right.
and the buyer changed his mind about the house, he just decided he didn't want it anymore,
Yeah.
then this is a potential opportunity. The current purchase agreement, which is a little different from a couple years ago, the current purchase agreement says, if the seller will not lower the price to match the appraised value, then the buyer may terminate the transaction. So if we're at 350 and the appraisal comes at 325 and we have no appraisal gap, and we say, Mr. Seller, you're gonna have to take 325, and he says, no, I'll take 326, $1,000 appraisal gap, we can walk away. If he agrees to drop to 325, you're still stuck in the deal. Mm-hmm. So if the seller will drop it, you have to buy it. If they will not, then you can walk away. Okay? That's a good question. And we're going to go in depth about some of those rules on future videos as we talk through contracts, but that's the way that works. So, for this conversation, we've now arrived at the price that everybody agreed on. Either the appraisal came back okay, or it came back low, but the appraisal gap was enough, or we all agreed on a new price that everybody was happy with. That is, and if you remember, I don't have it down here right now, but the buyer book, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, stone 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Stone 1, 2, 3. I don't know which way this is supposed to go on the screen, but I think it's this way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, moving the house, that sort of thing. we did inspections already. That's a big, slippery, scary stone. And then appraisal was the next stone, and that one's now done. So the next step is literally closing the house. And you're like, oh, well, that's easy. The video's over. Nope, not over. Sorry, not that lucky. So remember, we did all these inspection items. Let's say there was electricity thing to fix in the panel, and there was a water leak under a sink, and there was some roof repairs to be done. Well, we got to make sure those are done. So part of our email system to the clients is right off the bat, after we're through with inspections, she's going to have already sent them a thing that says, hey, congratulations, you're through the inspection period. Here's the repairs the seller agreed to make. And we will be following up with the seller, meaning the list agent, to find out when those repairs are planned to be accomplished. At that point, you can schedule a reinspection with your same inspector for a reduced fee to come and check the items that were repaired. This is what our email says. So in the middle of, generally it's going to be after the appraisal is when these repairs are going to be beginning to be done. Because many sellers, wisely, are not going to do the repairs until the appraisal's back. Because why would they fix it if we don't even close the deal because the appraisal causes a problem? They sell to the next buyer who may not want those things fixed. So that's what we're doing is we're at this appraisal part. It's over, and now we're starting to check on repairs, make sure they're done when they say they're going to be done on July 2nd. Awesome. So maybe July 3rd or 4th, our client calls in May, but has it scheduled that on July 3rd or 4th, their inspector's going to go back out and check the repair on the panel, check the leak under the sink, check the roof repairs, make sure they're done right. Going to cost them $125 for a reinspect or whatever. That's a number I like to use, depending on who they picked, and some of those things will matter. Some inspectors will come out for free, but not many. Most of them are additional charge. I'm going to go backwards one step here. In your appraisal world, if there are repairs called for by underwriting or the appraiser, then the appraiser will likely have to go check those repairs when they're done. So once you've negotiated who's doing the repairs and all that stuff, you need to, similar to inspections, we're going to need to tell the lender, hey, we're going to get those all done by Friday, so go ahead and schedule the reinspection for the appraiser, the beginning of the next week, something like that. So you're going to be in communication with the seller on, who's doing say we've got an FHA loan, we have to scrape and paint the shed because it's all chipping, peeling, gross paint. Okay, great. The seller says, hey, I'll hire a guy, we'll get it done this weekend. Cool. So then you can respond back to the lender and say, hey, they're going to get that all done this weekend. Go ahead and schedule the appraiser to come back out starting Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever they can get out.
The appraiser or the inspector?
That would be the appraiser. So if the appraiser or the underwriting team that looks at the appraisal requires a repair, such as paint to a barn.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yep. Then I had to jump back to appraisal. Then we got to communicate to the seller when's this going to get done, and then tell the lender to get the appraiser back out, because it can be a while to get an appraiser out. You do not want to wait until it's done to schedule the appraiser, especially if you're running close on time. So that's another element that's gonna have to happen. So back to inspection repairs. So we've negotiated those repairs, some other repairs on inspection, and those items are being accomplished. We find out when they're going to be done, and then we actually go ahead and schedule in advance our inspector to come back out to check them. They don't have to. Remember, appraisals and inspections are two totally different things. They never cross paths, generally. So, totally different. But this inspector one, our client's going to decide, do you want to pay $125, $150 to have your guy come back out and reinspect it and check the items that we requested, or do you feel like you're comfortable just walking in and, okay, yeah, panel looks good. I don't know, right? So they can they can kind of not worry about it. They can kind of worry about it. It's up to them. We encourage it, just like we do the inspection. We encourage it. We're never going to tell you you shouldn't do this. From a risk standpoint, we might tell you that if you ask for inspections, you may not get the house because of the craziness of the market, but that's up to them. But we're never going to say they shouldn't do inspections from a risk analysis. It's always obviously way risky to spend $300,000 on anything and not look at it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But it kind of does if you really want a house in this market. Anyway, we're going to give them the option way before you give them the option. But the emails are saying, hey, be thinking about this. Do you want to do a reinspection? And if they do, then, let us know. We can set it up. You go set it up, whatever. But then reinspection for the inspection stuff happens. If there's a problem, then you deal with it. If there's not a problem, then wonderful. But now is when, right in this range of time, within about 2 weeks of closing, is when we're scheduling closing to happen. In my world, this is a good pointer. When you get a contract, go ahead and put closing day in your calendar from 9 to 5. Just put it in your calendar. Closing on 123 Main Street, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Why? Your clients are going to get an email that says block the whole day out so that we can make sure we have a good time for closing. You should block the whole day out too. Doesn't mean you can't still put some things on your calendar that day, but what you don't want to do is end up scheduling a vacation on closing day if you can help it, right? There's things that you can't help. There's times people are going to close and you're already scheduled for vacation, and you just have to let them know. Be upfront and early about that. Don't surprise them the day before closing. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to be there. Hard dev's going to show up instead of me that you've never met. We're going to make sure that we've blocked it out. And I still absolutely schedule 1 or 2 things that day, but I don't fill the day up as much when I already see that block out. So about 2 weeks prior to closing, could be earlier, could be later, depending on the flow of things. But Andrea is going to work with the title company and your client to schedule a closing time. It might be a remote closing. So they're going to actually, with one of our devs deals right now, they're going to send a notary in New York or New Jersey, wherever he's at, and he's going to sign there. But we're going to schedule closing and schedule final walkthrough. You need to walk through the house with your client before closing, right before closing. I don't care so much if it's the day of closing, the day before, 2 days before, but we're trying to avoid a major problem. It is a terrible phone call to receive that your clients just bought a $300,000 house and they went to move in and the basement's got a foot of water in it. And it hasn't rained in a week. So guess what just happened? Is malpractice. You're supposed to know as an agent that you're supposed to do a final walkthrough, and you didn't encourage it, you spaced it, and now your clients just bought a house with a foot of water in the basement. It hasn't rained in a week. So it wasn't like it was raining during closing and then, oh my gosh, it broke during closing. Like, who could have avoided that? No, it was like, no, it didn't rain for a week. It's been flooded for at least a week. And then your clients are like, what do we do? And you're like, I don't know. Let me check how much money I have in my bank account right now to fix this problem for you. Because I had that talk with an agent on the other side of the deal. She was all mad at me about something. The washer and dryer didn't stay in the house, and she thought it did, and she just doesn't understand what you guys are all currently learning. And I said, ma'am, we've all bought our share of appliances because we messed up and had to fix it. I've bought fridges. I actually just bought a fridge. It wasn't because I messed up, it's because it was being really nice. But I just bought a fridge yesterday.
And final walkthrough, and then we have some papers which the buyer has to sign.
You got it. Yep. So we do the final walkthrough because we don't want to have this problem. We're going to walk through the day of closing if you can help it. Day before, the 2 days before if you have to. Like, you just figure it's got to be schedule oriented for your client. If they can make it at 10 a.m. and your closing's at 11, that's great, because there's not supposed to be any problems. But the problems, I'll get to the paper here in a second, I promise. The problems are going to be The TV mounts aren't on the walls and they're supposed to be. They took the fridge and they shouldn't have. There's scratches down the stairway where they were carrying a couch, right? Or maybe they left a bunch of trash in the yard. Maybe there's a pile of bricks. There's still a pile of bricks in the corner of the yard. Those aren't supposed to be there. That's, unless those are communicated specifically. Trash is gone, debris is gone, personal property is gone. You know, you might find out that they pulled up the rose bush out front. You cannot pull rose bushes. You can't take your flower bulbs. You know, like these items, you can't do that. So you're going to show up and they're going to go, where's the wine fridge? And you're going to look at your PA and go, well, good question. It should be here. Because according to the PA, the wine fridge stayed. And at that point, you're going to have a very awkward communication with the
But
seller.
closing company have the key of the house because
Not always.
Not,
Nope, not always. Most of the time they don't. The other agent will have the key, or it'll be in a lockbox on the door because that's how you got in. Okay, so you're going to schedule the final walkthrough just like a showing.
just a showing. Okay.
Yep, except for you're going to mark final walkthrough maybe, but you schedule it like normal. You go there, you've got the key. A little small point here is you may talk to the other agent and say, hey, can I just bring the key with me to closing? Right? I'll leave the lockbox here. Or hey, do you want me to grab your lockbox? Maybe it's a lockbox that you can take off the door. The master lock ones you probably won't be able to, but you may go, like mine, you could take it off and you go, hey Eli, you want me to bring your lockbox and the key to closing? And they say, oh yeah, that'd be great, thanks. Hey, will you grab my riders while you're there too? Like, I mean, who knows, right? Communication. But that's how you end up with the key is communication. And we're telling the the listing side what to do. Whether they do it, we don't know, but we're communicating in an email to them where to put the keys, where to put the clickers, where to put the paperwork from the house, all on the counter. But there's still that key that's in the lockbox because you got to get in for your final walkthrough. So you're doing the final walkthrough. You caught, maybe they broke a window because they were carrying out a big stick and it poked through the window. Whatever.
You'd think they'd tell you.
You'd think, but they don't. And they're hoping you'll overlook it. It's a game, right? Like, what are you going to do? Not buy the house because there's a scratch on the wall? I don't know. Depends on your client, right? So the seller is going, man, dang it, I just scratched this wall really bad. Let's roll the dice. I bet you they won't hold up closing. And then you buy the house. But what's important is that your clients don't show up to move in and they see the scratch for the first time. Then it's your problem because you should have had them do a final walkthrough. Mm-hmm. So all of that said, there is a form in Zip Forms and it's in our template already for buyers. It's when you use the appropriate template, it's going to be there. The final walkthrough form, really well named. And it's going to say, I was given an opportunity and I took advantage of it. And I did the final walkthrough. And it's going to say, I was offered the opportunity and I declined to go to a final walkthrough. So you're going to mark if we do a final walkthrough, or if they said, no, I don't really want to do it, then then they sign it. So then we're covered because we gave them the option, they said no, or we gave them the option, they said yes, and we did it.
So in the remote closing, still he had to sign that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I would actually go to I would ask him, would you like me to do a final walkthrough with you on video?
Okay.
Because I do not personally and professionally, I don't want to be responsible for seeing things. I will look because I'm a nice guy, but if I miss the scratch with my eyes, I don't want to be held responsible. So I'm going to make them sign the paper that basically says they declined it, or I did it. One of the two, either one covers my bases. I either said, hey, do you want to walk through? And they said, do a video walkthrough with me. Great. Mm-hmm. They can sign that I did it. They can sign that I declined the in-person walkthrough. I don't care which one because they're not there. And they kind of did one. But as long as they walk through it and they felt okay, we're fine. But you should do it. Offer your client a video tour of it. I'll be looking, but I'll show you the house, and it's not perfect. They'd rather be there. I know they would, but they can't. So, but still do the form, because either they did it or they didn't. Either way, you're protected. The key is that we've offered the opportunity, and then they can say yes or no or get creative. So, final walkthrough occurred.
If something happened around that time and after an hour in the closing, so.
Yep, if something significant has occurred, then it makes things really weird, right? You have to call the agent and say, hey, there's a big scratch running down the entire staircase wall from something that they carried out. I'm gonna need a check for, hey, my drywall guy, and I'm gonna call my painter. I'm gonna say, how much is it gonna cost to fix this? I'm gonna take some pictures. He's gonna say, I can probably paint that hallway for $500 and doesn't look like it's deep enough for a drywall repair. Great, no problem. Mr. Seller, I need you to write a check to Bob's Painting for $500 and bring it to closing.
Oh, so that's separate, that don't come into the transaction.
That's right. I'm not gonna take that into the title company or the lender. I'm just gonna personally basically say, seller needs to pay Bob's Painting $500 so we can get this
But that's gonna be a conversation between
me and the agent.
you and the agent.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the seller.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. If I slip up and say seller and I'm the buyer's agent, I'm talking about the agent. Which is interesting. I do make that delineation mentally because I seldom get mad at agents, because in theory, I'm not in a fight with the agent, and that agent's never in a fight with me. It's the buyer and seller that are in a fight. So when I say seller, it's always going to be I'm communicating to the seller agent, the listing agent, vice versa. But yeah, it's an interesting point to note, though, that getting frustrated with another agent, unless they're just incompetent, that is frustrating. If they're not doing their job well, communicating well, those things. But if they're just being hard-nosed about an inspection repair or about a price, that's okay. It's not the agent. They want to close a deal.
Right.
It's the buyer or it's the seller that's being hard-nosed. So just remember that for your own mental and emotional sanity. But they filled out the form, you've done the final walkthrough, everything's good. Great, we've got the form and we move on. If there's problems, then you just have to deal with it. You call me and we'll figure it out, because it always is. It could be very different how we handle it. I mean, we've had where we were doing the final walkthrough and there's water rushing in from the septic system, filling the basement full of poop.
Lord.
I mean, we've seen it all, and we have to deal with it, and we delay closing or we escrow money, and we can come up with all kinds of fun ways to fix it. And that brings me to, what are you even looking for in a final walkthrough? I try not to be an inspector. I'm not an inspector. I'm telling them what they might want to do. I would recommend running all the utilities. Go run the furnace. Make sure it blows hot air. Go run the air conditioner. Make sure it blows cold air. Now, wintertime, you might not want to run the air conditioner, and you can read the internet about that, but the inspectors won't even run it below 60. If it's less than 60 degrees outside, they won't run it because it can cause problems, I guess. But, run the heat, run the cool, run the water, make sure the water's hot. Go feel the pipe at the top of the water heater, make sure it's warm. Run the water in all the sinks. Leaks are not really important at that point, in my opinion. I just want to make sure everything's functioning still, which is going to be supply lines for hot and cold water. I want to make sure the toilets work, the showers, I'm going to do the same thing. Just make sure it all works. Unlikely, very unlikely that anything occurs that is not already on the inspection report. But might as well check. People do have furnaces, or you show up on a really hot summer day and the air conditioner's cranking and it's not blowing cold air. It absolutely could have had a malfunction that day, and we now need a new capacitor in the outdoor unit. So you're just running all the utilities, you're flipping on the lights, making sure everything's working, maybe turn a burner on the oven, look at it, make sure it turns red. You're just kind of letting them know, hey, what do you, if there was a problem, what would you like to know about before we buy this house? If there was a new problem, what do you want to know? And that's what I would check. So I flush toilets, turn on water, run the heat, run the air, and generally just look around. Make sure that There's no big scratches, dings. Make sure there's nothing missing that's supposed to stay. They didn't go take all the cabinets off the wall in the kitchen. Make sure the basement's dry like you expected it to be. Make sure whatever. That's why I'm not doing it as an inspector. I'm coaching them through what they should do, because I don't want them to turn around and look at me and go, well, Eli, why do we not know that this was broken? I'm like, because you must not have checked it. I don't know. Like I cannot do this for you, because I cannot have you think I'm an inspector. I'm not licensed to do this, that sort of thing. So I'm very much protecting myself legally. Do I occasionally turn some water on? Yes. But I'm not going to be known as the guy checking the house before we close. That makes sense? I don't want that title.
So you don't sit there and point things out?
I will point things out if I see them, yes. And I'll say, I'd tell my clients, hey, so what we're here to do today, when we walk in, say, all right, all we're doing today is checking to make sure you don't see any major problems that weren't here before. And I mentioned it to them. Of course, there's going to be scratches on the floor where their kitchen table used to be. That's where your table's going too. They're not going to matter.
Or there might have been a rug there.
Yep,
and you didn't see it.
Yep, there could have been a rug there we didn't see. Of course, there's going to be things on the wall, little nails or nail holes or spots that need touched up painting, because they have stuff on the walls. You're going to put things on the walls too. That's normal. By the way, that's why I tell my listing clients, do not take nails out of the wall and never take your TV mounts. These are just conversations you do not want to be having with a buyer's agent.
Right.
Leave your nails and leave your TV mounts. There's no reason to create a big gaping hole in the wall.
If something happened big, like something wrong when any buyer buy the home, he cannot sue the agent because the agent is not responsible, right?
Generally, yeah, the buyer. So he asked, if something goes wrong with the home big, can the buyer sue the agent? Are we talking about a buyer suing their buyer's agent? Meaning the buyer, like if you had a buyer and your buyer's mad at you?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody in America can sue anybody. Always remember that you can get away with anything until you're caught and a judge decides that you're getting punished, right? Like, you could steal whatever you want. And if you never get caught or the judge never convicts you, you got away with it. So this is the wonderful world of America. The community doesn't necessarily get to vote on that sometimes. And similarly, anybody can sue anybody. And when you get sued, everybody gets sued. So if your buyer is mad enough at a big enough thing and they've got deep pockets, they're going to sue you, me, Brent, Fathom, the listing agent, the seller, the seller's dog. I mean, they're going to sue everybody because somebody's going to pay for this. I don't care who. They're going to be, all of us are going to be named. That's generally how it goes. And so whether or not they win is the question. And that I don't know. But that's why we do so much in this training. That's why it's so scary when an agent, I'm like I'll call their managing broker. I'll say, listen, if I was their managing broker, I would want to know that this is what they think about this scenario, because that's scary for their buyer, which is therefore your buyer, which therefore means you're in danger of a lawsuit, because if this ever goes wrong, you're going to get sued. So I have that conversation with bosses sometimes because of that. So if there's a major problem, you just need to make sure you're doing all these items. Your Honor, remember, it's all coming up in court. Everything you write, everything you say, even if you said it or not, they're going to tell them what you said in their mind. Everything, your text messages, emails, phone conversations, everything's coming up in court. So that's why everything I'm doing, at least I try to have a mind of, if a judge gets to see this, how is it going to look? Your Honor, we did a final walkthrough. I clearly articulated that I am not an inspector, and I encourage them to check all of the stuff that they feel is important to know before they buy the house. They had every opportunity to have an inspector there with them if they wanted to. We don't necessarily recommend it. It's not common, but they could have. And they checked. I remember them turning faucets on, and I can't tell you if they turned them all on. And I can't tell you if they went in the basement, although I was accompanying them. I can't remember who exactly, but they had every opportunity to explore every inch of that home. And if they didn't do it, I don't really have any. And they signed the paper that they said they did. I don't know what to tell you. Guess what though? That same scenario, we close on the house, buyers show up, the basement's full of water, and we get sued. And they go, hey, hard ev. They said they didn't look at the house for 2 weeks prior to closing. They saw it at the showing, they saw it at the inspection, and then they didn't see it again before they closed. That was a 2-week gap. What happened? I don't know. I forgot. I didn't take him. Well, Hardev, I keep using his name. He would never do this, but Hardev, you're the professional. They hired you. You got paid $9,000 to do your job, and then that's what happens. Like, we're supposed to be the professionals, so you just have to be careful that we are the professionals. That's why I told you I'm so scared of these agents that don't know what they're doing, and they're not sitting through 1.5-hour sessions every week to learn what to do. Because if you don't know to do a final walkthrough, you've got so many things going on when you're doing a transaction, and you're just holding on for dear life. And all of a sudden you show up and your first deal is a problem one where this sort of thing happens. You're just as culpable as me. Now, I'm going to get a severe punishment, maybe more than you would, because I've done 400 transactions and you've done 0. But Brent and you and me at this point are still on the hook. I mean, we're responsible for it. You are a licensed professional. It'd be like a lawyer doing something wrong or a doctor doing something wrong. Like, you signed up for this. So that's why all these items are built to shield us, to help our client and shield us from retribution if there's a problem. Because we said you should get an inspection. You chose not to. That's not our problem. Those sorts of things. So yeah, you work through the deals if there is anything wrong. They sign the paper, and then we go to closing. The benefits and curses of when to do the final walkthrough. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but it scares me to death when I notice I'm walking into closing and I go, oh no, I forgot a final walkthrough. Like, I'm scared.
So do you say, let's go now?
So closing company need that paper?
No, that's just between the buyer and you. Yeah, buyer and our company. No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I have absolutely scheduled a showing real quick and gone myself to check. Not because it was going to help me legally, but because at least gave me some peace of mind that they're likely not going to show up and see a problem because I walked through the house.
Okay.
So yes, I have done, oh no, and was 15 minutes late to closing because I was checking your house. Like, then they think you're really good. Okay, I wanted to just I know things are crazy. Or maybe I don't even say anything. I just, it makes me feel better.
Can you take a video though? Can you do that?
Yeah, you can always do that. I always recommend anytime you need proof, for instance, as a listing side, if I'm going to maintain possession of the house, I'm going to take videos of all the problems or a picture of all the dings on the walls so that we all know when the buyer comes back in a month later to take possession finally, they're going to go, hey, that wasn't there. And I'm going to go, yes, it was. Look at the picture from closing day. That's your issue now. And so vice versa, a buyer is going to take a picture. You can use listing photos. You could take pictures during your walkthrough. You can do anything you want to try to stay safe. The only time I take pictures is on pre and post closing possession normally. And then obviously other things if I want to verify something or remember I need a fridge or something. But you can take photos. Buyer's going to have to take photos to go to court of what the damage was. And the question is going to be, can the seller prove that it's not the previous, those sorts of things. Yeah. But during the final walkthrough, we're doing all those checks. Sorry, I never got through this, but we're checking the scratches and we're like, you just prepare your buyer. This is going to be the big key. When you walk in and start to tell them what we're here to do, you're going to prepare them for the marks on the walls. I know I said that. The scratches under the table, the wall behind the sofa, right? It's been rubbed raw there, those sorts of things.
And when we're selling the home, if the seller write down sold as it is.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a contract issue, which we'll get into. As is there's a legal contract, and then there's hey, I just don't want to make any repairs. So we're not going to dig into that deeply today, but if it's as is, that doesn't change the fact that the house needs to be in substantially the same condition when we signed the seller's disclosure and looked at the house as it is today. Just because it's as is doesn't mean that they can light a fire in the kitchen between the contract and closing. So it's still, I bought this house in this condition and now it's in a totally different condition. That's still a problem, even as is or waived inspections or anything like that. So, so we've turned in the paper, everything's good, or we found out there's a problem, we dealt with it. The one thing I was gonna say was, when you choose when to do the walkthrough, the day of is great if everything goes according to plan. The day of is terrible if there's a problem. Now we can't close. The day before, or 2 days or 3 days before is great if there's a problem. But it's bad because if everything's okay, there's still 3 days for something to go wrong if you did it 3 days before closing. Mm-hmm. So you got to kind of mix you can do 2 of them. I mean, I guess. I just don't see that happening. But if you want to go 2 days early, that's fine, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer. But there's a window of time and there's rain coming that there could be an issue that pops up. Unlikely, but possible. Again, our job is not to fearmonger. Our job is not to make decisions for them. Our job is to give them the options and let them know the pros and the cons to them and what could happen if and those sorts of things. In our experience, it's not an issue. However, there are 2 days left. Or if we do the walkthrough on the morning, it could delay closing if we do find an issue. So, and they may go, well, we don't want to delay closing because we already have to be out of our house, so we're going to be homeless for 4 days, So they're gonna then bring all these things into it and make a decision. So that's final walkthrough. I'm gonna get through closing and then we're gonna be done. So then on the final walkthrough is done the day of, and you go to closing. Basically, it's already been all pre-scheduled. I always like to call my client, the day before closing and say, hey, everything, they've already communicated, they've already scheduled, they know when it's at, they know where it's at. It's all pretty simple. But I just will communicate to them the day before or 2 days before. Say, hey, exciting day coming up. Anything you need from me right now? And I know I always bring up, I know we've emailed you and there's been a lot of information in there. Is there anything you have questions about? I'm not going to regurgitate the emails. Like, we emailed you. We've been emailing you this whole time. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that we have communicated everything you need to know. But, is there anything you have questions about? So I'm going to do that. We show up to closing. You're going to want to make sure you've got a bag from us. We've got kind of like the buyer bags that I've got with a little gift in there and the book and all that stuff. I've got a closing packet that we basically do. It's very simple. It's just 2 really cool cups. They're really cool and expensive, and a magnet with my information on it. That way they can put it on their fridge, and then it's a big one too. And I'll tell you why I give that. Part of the reason I wanted obviously to call us all again, but there's another reason too. But it's got this bag. Make sure you've got one of those because it's nice to have something for them. Make sure you've communicated with the agent regarding the key. How are we transferring the key? It's not real fun to walk out of closing with nothing in the buyer's hand. So at least have the bag with the cups. And if you can have a key, great. But sometimes it's still in the lockbox, and because maybe you did a walkthrough like 3 days early and you weren't going to hold the key for 3 days. So then you just maybe say, hey, the code for the lockbox is 5478, and the buyer will go get the key out of the lockbox themselves, and then they'll text you. But you have something, you make it memorable, you be exciting, you be confident in the closing room. This is why we learn. When I walk into a closing room, almost in every scenario, I am the smartest guy in the room. Why? Not because I'm just naturally gifted, but because I've spent 4 years studying and listening and reading and making sure I know what's going on. I may not actually be, but I sure feel like I am, and that's the key in real estate, right? I don't have to be the best real estate agent. I have to be convinced I might be, and so you should work with me, right? So same thing there. You want to be super confident at closing, which means you'll get more and more confident as you go, but it's fun, it's exciting. We keep the buyers and sellers separate now for timing and for awkwardness, so we don't close buyers and sellers together hardly ever anymore. It's a silly idea to begin with. It's very Midwestern, hunky-dory, weird, everybody's friends. It's just not that way. So we keep them separate now almost all the time. So it's going to be you and your buyer and the closer, and you're going to just be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, taking photos, being excited, that sort of thing. And then you're going to sit and be relatively quiet during the closing. They're going to ask questions. They're going to, do you want to go over numbers or not? Have you seen this? Don't take offense. Don't be afraid. Just sit there and listen. And if they have a question, you might know the answer, but you might not. You're not a lawyer. The title company is not allowed to explain documents to them. You're not either. You're allowed to identify the document. Oh, this is what we fill out to see if you need a 1099 for the proceeds, for the profits. But you can't go, all right, so I think you should check that box and that box and that box. Or explain the ins and outs of an affidavit for a vendor's affidavit. That's not your job. They need to read it. And if they don't understand it or are not comfortable, they can go hire a lawyer. That's it. You will get comfortable enough where you can identify and help general idea, which is totally fine. Hey, big idea is here is that they didn't do this. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they sign it. If you've got a reader, like a guy that you know is going to read every document, then tell the title company and get those documents to him 2 days before closing. Otherwise, you're going to be at closing for 4 hours. So if you have a reader, it's like having a kid that's a runner.
Yeah.
If you have a reader, get the documents early and get them over to them. Otherwise, you're going to be there forever and everybody is going to hate you. And you know if you have a reader because they read everything you sent, made corrections every time you sent something. They asked 100,000 questions. They grilled their lender to no end. If you have a reader. So I don't have many, but I
buyer and seller never sit on that same table?
They do.
They do.
Other companies, we don't do it because it's awkward.
Okay.
And it's not always amicable. Sometimes we just whipped on them a bunch and they don't like us very much. Sometimes the two agents aren't very good friends at the end of it. Whatever. There's just no reason. And then conversations. And then we're already trying to get title company, the buyer, and me on the same page for schedules. Why would I want to add the seller and the seller's agent schedule to this mix? It's just silly. So we just go, we literally on one of our email, the title says we do not do joint closings. The seller can schedule their own separately or whatever. We don't even talk to them about when they're closing. We may know when they're closing because the title company tells us, but we don't talk to them about it. And you'll get a lot of agents that are confused by that because they're just so used to closing together. And we're like, we ain't got time to close together. We're not going to lump 5 schedules together, let alone, 3 is already tough enough.
It is super awkward though.
And it's awkward. You got questions and what ifs and, oh, that's not right. And then you got too many people involved.
Yeah.
So when you're at closing, you're super chill. Your goal is to make it fun for your client. You're talking, you're joking, you're loving them. You're remembering this is a paycheck for you, which is exciting, but don't talk about you. This is something I see all the time. Agents want to talk about agent stuff. It's exciting. Everybody loves real estate, but if you're not careful, you and the other agent will end up just talking shop while the closing is going on. No, you're on your client. We're talking about their new house, how excited they are, what color they're going to paint the walls. Again, if I'm not with the other agent, that definitely helps. But be careful. You and the closer don't talk shop. And then certainly don't talk shop with your client about every time a document comes up, you don't have to say something to show how smart you are. I have that problem. I love it. I think it's so super fun to talk about the documents and the intricacies and the problems and why that's there. And they don't care. They're just signing it. So just let them enjoy signing. And if they have a question, you can answer it. But just chill out and just focus on fun. Focus on the house. Focus on getting the keys. When are you moving in? All these different things. That's a big thing. Customer service. It's about them. So make it about them. Don't let anybody else in the room cause that problem. And then if you're with the other side, you can do it at closing. If you're not, you want to make sure you have maybe communicated with the agent. Hey, real quick, just what day's trash day? That's a great one. What day's the recycle day? What day's heavy trash day? Is there anything obscure about the house that we should know? A light switch, you have to hold your tongue just right to operate. You don't need a garage code because you can reset those, and you should reset it anyway. But when you're asking about the keys and transferring keys and figuring all that out, then also asking about trash days and these other things. That's something we're working on developing. We might be able to do that for you in our system. But these are all things, again, if you're moving into this house, what do you want to know? I want to know when trash day is. So maybe tomorrow, and I just missed a huge opportunity.
Would you type that up, or is there
I would just put it in a text,
Okay.
and then I would copy and paste it to my client, make it real informal. But we may have a formalized version of that eventually. But for now, just be thinking, if I was moving in, what would I want to know?
Yeah.
I've never had it be a real issue. If I didn't do that, nobody cared. They figured it out. Internet's a wonderful thing. So not a big deal, but you're working on that. You're working on transferring keys. You're confirming with the agent, before closing, after closing. You're putting dates in your calendar. If possession's not for 7 days, you better have it in your calendar on day 5 after closing to check with the agent on how it's going, because your client's sure as heck going to be asking you. And then I tell my client, hey, on Friday, I'm going to call them to see how things are going towards that move out so you can have it on Monday. So I'm going to be following up on Friday, so I'll be in touch with you when I hear something on Friday. Otherwise, they're going to be calling you. Hey, how's the move out going? Hey, are we still going to get it Monday? You just tell your client what's up. Hey, I've got it in my calendar right here. And I'm going to check with the agent on Friday about how the move out's going. I'll let you know. Maybe you're exchanging some rent back money. Maybe there's all different things you're organizing. Don't forget them. Just get to work on it. You're putting in your date a month or two later. You just kind of pick a date out there, a month or two later, unless it's the end of the year, when you're going to remind them about filing for their exemptions or getting the receipts for their tax exemptions. You don't want to find out that one of your clients, just because you were lazy, didn't get the receipts for their tax exemptions. Their taxes doubled. Now they can't afford their house payment. You have to come sell it. I'm not sure they're calling you anyway. So you put that in your calendar. So now at closing, I've got talk to the agent about possession. I've got in there, this is the day that the Skinners take possession. I've got in there, remind Skinners about getting the receipt for their homestead tax exemption. I've got all these calendar dates going in my phone to make sure that I follow up on those items. And guess what? It gives you another seemingly legitimate reason to call them again, ask for referrals, ask for a Google review, just check in on them. Guess what? This is a relationship game. So these stopping points aren't a headache. They are you doing your job well, and you get repeat and referral business this way. So these are all things that are happening at closing. That packet has a big magnet in it. When I say these are two really cool cups, I've got on there Love Lucas, which is an organization that we helped start that pays for the memorial expenses for families that lose infants and pregnancies. So, it's $750 to $1,000 average per child that dies. Their parents call us, and we pay for all of that. We don't pay for the funeral. We don't pay for the grave plot or the mausoleum space, but we have a cheap headstone that they can buy, and we may even cover that sometimes. The cremation, the burial costs, the funerals, the caskets, those things. We pay for that. It averages about, like I said, $750 to $1,000. Our organization does, called lovelucas.org. And that's heavily funded by myself and my best friend. That's on the cup. And there is a business card for that organization. So we give back, we love people, and we're going to spend $100,000 as an organization this year on that, without a doubt. So this is things you can talk to your people like, hey, our company, our owner specific, whatever you want to say, supports Love Lucas, which is this great organization that blank, and you're telling everybody at the table. It's like a wonderful thing. And that's on the cup here. Obviously, you got some of our information, but it's really cool. But I've got a magnet in there for you. And that magnet's big, because I don't want you to chuck it, because I want you to call me. I don't want you to call me just to sell this house or buy another one, or just to tell me your friends are looking. I want you to call me if you need a contractor. If you have a struggle with a house, you have a question. I want you to call me when you're thinking refinancing maybe in your future. I don't get paid on refinances. I don't get paid to hand you contractors. I just want to be a blessing to you moving forward in real estate, and there's lots of ways I can do that. So I want you to call me no matter what, or call Eli is what it's going to say there. because my name is on it. But the other thing is at the end of this closing, she's going to hand you some bright yellow pieces of paper to remind you about your tax exemptions. And you need a big magnet to hold it because there's a handful of papers with that. So I want you to put those right on your new fridge. And if you're not moving into your house yet, I want you to put them on your current fridge. And when you move them and put them on your new fridge, because you forget about that and your taxes are doubling next year. So that's why this magnet's here. I want you to call me for any reason real estate related, and heck, you call me for friend stuff. That's fine too. Love you. I'm so happy we met. But secondly, I want you to put these papers on your fridge, because if you mess this up, you're gonna be mad. And you ain't gonna be mad at me because I gave you a magnet. That's the conversation I have about the magnet. It's really helpful, transitions and all those things. So you can make sure you have those when you go to closing. They're here at the house.
And mostly buyer file the tax exemption, or the closing company already?
The title company will file your tax exemptions for you. However, the buyer needs to get a receipt. They need to eventually 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, once everything's done, filed with the county, they need to call the county and get the county to send them an email receipt, or go in and get a receipt. Because if we wave that, hey, we filed it, look, we filed it, I know we did, the title company did, and the county goes, we don't have it filed, sorry, you're out of luck. You need to have a piece of paper saying you did it. And that's you'll get some sort of receipt for that if you ask. So that's closing. There's more to it. You are always welcome to come with me to closings. I could probably do better at telling you when they are, but basically I leave it on my team, people watching at home, I leave it on you to ask me, hey Eli, what's going on? What can I come to? Where can I be? Because I can't keep track of, oh yeah, I need to invite people to all this stuff. No. You guys are laying around at home trying to figure out your sphere of influence and build a business and all that. Part of it should be check in with Eli. Is there an open house I can do? Is there a closing I can go to? Is there a showing I can attend? Is there a listing appointment I can go to? Is there a house I can watch you measure? Is there blankety blank? So this is one of them, closing, big deal. And you're gonna feel way better if you've been to 4 or 5 closings with me than when you go to your first one and you've never been to one before. You don't even know where to sit, literally. And that's a big deal. Not like a big deal, but like it's a big deal, like where to sit. I walk into the room and say, hey, you sit right there and you'll be good. I'll just be over here hanging out. Because I know what I'm doing. I'm comfortable, I'm confident. You guys can be too.
And when they file the tax exemption, then the tax should be 1%. If they don't file, then it should be 2%?
2%.
Okay.
Yep, it's capped at 1% for homestead exemptions. One house in Indiana, one house you live in,
1%.
homestead exemption 1%, plus referendums, which can make it a little higher. And then it's capped there. It could be less, but it's capped at 1. And then same with investor status, meaning a second home or maybe a rental you own.
2%.
It's going to be 2% cap plus referendum. So, all right, we've closed. Then all you do from there is follow up. Ask for Google reviews. Ask for references and referrals. Ask for, you're just following up with them. They're in a new drip campaign on KV Core now. You put them in as a past client, and now they're getting a once a month email with, different things. You could set up every month they get a reminder to change their furnace filters. Hey, spring, April 10th is the best day historically to plant grass seed. Whatever. Like ongoing follow up with these people will produce results in your business. 10% of your sphere should buy, sell, or refer every year if you work that sphere properly. Your sphere is also including past clients. And I work exclusively on my sphere and past clients at this point. I mean, almost. You guys get all the leads. I don't get any. I get some, I guess, but not many. I may get a sign call here and there that I just had to, I do what I tell you to do, right? I jump up and go show a house, but not very often. So and I don't even work my sphere well. If I did, we'd need about 10 more of you to help figure it all out. So that's it, following up. And then you make sure Andrea goes in, no, does she have to do anything with a buyer? Nope, not really. Sellers, there's some post-closing follow-up officially, but for this, it's just that. I'm working on some really cool stuff. as a team. So people that are watching this will be in place probably by the time you're watching this, at least if you're a year from now or something. But kind of like congratulations boxes we'll deliver to people that buy houses and stuff like that. We're working on that right now. So I just need to, Andrea's going to help sort that out, but just know they'll get you don't have to tell them, but they'll get a little box show up on their front porch from our team saying congrats, thanks. We're trying to set ourselves apart as the best in the business because I believe we are. It's just a matter of making sure everybody else knows it. So, all right. Final questions for the video?
No, my head hurts.
Yeah, I bet. Lots going on. All right, people. Peace.